Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're not just, analyzing literature. We're treating Homer's epic poems like a massive historical crime scene. We're going to rigorously separate the hard-established facts from the mythological fiction and really peel back the layers of a mystery that's literally 3,000 years old. For thousands of years, the tale of Odysseus, that epic 10-year war at the impenetrable city of Troy, and his crazy monster-filled journey home, well, it was considered pure fantasy, right? Just wild imaginations spun by ancient poets. I mean, we've all heard the stories of sea nymphs, wrathful gods, and magical interventions. But we really have to ask ourselves, what if the greatest story ever told is actually a true story? What if the foundation of this whole epic wasn't just some fairy tale, but a very real ancient reality that's just been heavily obscured by centuries of myth? To figure this out, we're putting the mythical text head-to-head with modern scientific data. We're going to look at three distinct fields today: archaeology, network science, and astronomy, to see exactly what holds up to modern scrutiny as true historical fact, and what was just added as, fictional window dressing.
So let's dive right into Investigation 1, the scene of the crime.
Our investigation kicks off right at the cracked stone walls of ancient Troy. Now, this was a legendary battlefield once thought to exist entirely in the minds of the ancient Greeks, completely untethered from actual geography. In the 19th century, early and honestly rather destructive excavations by an adventurer named Heinrich Schliemann dug deep into a layer we now call Troy II. He found this brilliant gold treasure and confidently claimed he'd found Homer's Troy. But actually, modern archaeology proved that treasure was a full 1,000 years too early. The real Troy of the epics is actually found in the layers known as Troy 6 and 6VA, perfectly aligning with the late Bronze Age timeline. And what's truly astounding here is the sheer scale of it all. Under the direction of modern archaeologists, things like 3D mapping, magnetometer surveys, and extensive trenching have revealed that the real late Bronze Age Troy was actually 15 times larger than previously thought. It definitely wasn't some minor, insignificant settlement. It was a sprawling, 75-acre stronghold. Surrounding this massive lower city was a U-shaped defensive ditch over 11.5 feet wide, carved straight into the limestone bedrock. But the real smoking gun, that comes from the records of the neighboring massive Hittite Empire. Their treaties actually prove this kingdom, which they referred to as Wilusa, existed and experienced intense military conflicts during the exact time the Trojan War supposedly occurred, right between 1400 and 1200 BC.
So here is our first verdict. The myth claims this devastating 10-year war was fought over a magical golden apple tossed by the goddess of discord, but the proven historical reality? This was a period of intense late Bronze Age geopolitical conflict centered on a massive, heavily fortified Anatolian stronghold. Those battles were very, very real.
Moving right along to Investigation 2, the suspects.
With 342 unique characters named in the Odyssey alone, we need to know if their relationships actually hold up to modern network science. To do this, a team of physicists analyzed the text exactly like a modern dataset. They mapped connections between characters only if they met some pretty strict criteria. They had to share a specific event, speak directly to one another, or cite one another with specific details. This completely removed all the guesswork.
So in network science, real human social networks, think of your connections on Facebook, have very distinct mathematical signatures. On the flip side, entirely fictional universes, like comic book character networks, have completely different, mathematically impossible signatures. Interestingly, the resulting data showed that the Odyssey possesses these small world traits of real social networks, where everyone is connected by just a few degrees of separation, but simultaneously features the mathematical anomalies found in entirely fictional universes. It was this really bizarre hybrid.
Looking a bit deeper, the researchers realized this mathematical anomaly was caused by a specific group they called Community A. This was a highly connected, dense group of mythological gods and monsters. Absurdly, these beings would just kind of randomly drop out of the sky, interact with isolated low-level human characters, and completely break the natural mathematical flow of a real functioning society.
But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. When the scientists digitally removed Community A, literally taking the gods, monsters, and divine beings out of the dataset completely, the remaining human network perfectly matched the power law structure and the social grouping habits of a completely real-world human society.
Which brings us to our second verdict. The myth presents a world managed by monsters and divine intervention, but the proven reality?
The underlying structure of the Odyssey is actually a mathematically sound, highly accurate sociological blueprint of ancient human networks, just heavily disguised by a layer of mythological fiction.
All right, let's get into Investigation 3, the timeline and the weaponry.
Now we're diving into the dark, heavy sea fog of Odysseus' epic journey home to test his timeline and the so-called magic he encountered along the way. Take the sorceress Circe, who famously turns his men into pigs. To protect himself, Odysseus consumes a magic herb on the advice of a god. While this sounds like pure fantasy, modern scientists now recognize that the detailed descriptions of herbs and drugs throughout these passages are actually fictionalized expressions of very real, ancient pharmacological and botanical knowledge. It wasn't literal magic, it was early medicine and chemistry.
But even more astonishing is the timeline itself. Astronomers from Rockefeller University combed through the text and tracked 4 highly specific celestial clues hidden in the narrative, leading up to the day Odysseus finally returns to Ithaca and slaughters his wife's corrupt suitors. Homer mentions a new moon on the day of the return. 6 days prior, Venus is high. 29 days before, the Pleiades are visible at sunset. And 33 days before, Mercury is high at dawn.
Using complex computer models, these astronomers discovered that this exact sequence of planetary movements and constellation alignments only happens incredibly rarely. In fact, within a 100-year span around the time of the Trojan War, this pattern points to exactly one date, a total solar eclipse that occurred right over the Ionian Islands at exactly 12:02 p.m. on April 16, 1178 BC. How wild is that?
So, our final verdict. The myth gives us random magic and divine timing, but the reality proves that behind the epic's veil of magic lies real early botany and an extraordinarily precise, astronomically verified timeline of a 12th century BC eclipse. The timing absolutely wasn't random divine intervention, it was a rigidly recorded cosmic event.
Which brings us to the final verdict: unmasking the epic.
We've successfully unmasked this epic, basically peeling away the fantasy to reveal the hard data beneath. As we've seen in this explainer, the dirt of the archaeological trenches showing a massive, real city of Troy, the mathematical data proving a genuine human social network, and the precise alignment of the stars confirming an 1178 BC solar eclipse, all of these point to a core of hard historical truth shining right through the shadows of myth. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. If the greatest myth of all time is actually built on a foundation of hard, verifiable scientific and historical facts, what other legendary ancient stories are just waiting for modern science to uncover their truth? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the myths.